Your Excellency, Rwanda has overcome significant challenges to become one of the most faster-growing economies within sub-Saharan Africa. The country now aspires to attain a middle-income status by 2035. Will there be a change in strategy or a shift in the model that will be put in place, considering the evolving and the unpredictable global landscape?
The need for change in any of these processes depends on circumstances or what is happening. But in my view, we are already on a path. We have clear policies and strategies, and so far, what has delivered what we have today from 2020, or really from 2000 to 2020, the 20 years, we had the 2020 vision. That's where we would be if we did everything right, or to a level that we were delivering very good results. We came to 2020, we found we did well, we made progress, but on some cases we fell short. We didn't get, well, it is hard to get 100%, but even if we got 90%, that would be a good measure, but in some cases we're at 60%. And so in this case, you may not change the policies as such or the strategies, but you may change the ways in which you are trying to achieve what you want to achieve, by insisting on more accountability, by looking for resources to invest, more resources to invest in areas that we did not get sufficient resources for, and have more people called upon to engage in doing what they are supposed to do. But of course there are external factors that change things, and some of the external factors we are not in control of, or actually many of them, if not all. Some of these external factors may compel us to change strategies, or if not policy as well, or both, or one of them. That's how it happens. So when we are on the path like we are, trying to do our best and scanning to see how the environment affects us, our own internally here and globally, then you start changing what needs to change in order to move with the time dictates. So, like we started, for example, with investing in people. There is still need to do that. That's why we keep investing as much as we can in education, in health, and skills, and so on. So that is one thing that really doesn't change, but requires more attention, more investments, and measuring what we were not doing well enough to see if we can adjust to what the time we are in demands. So in my view, in most cases, it is continuing with what we started doing years earlier and trying to do that better and more of it, and of course being able to again take into account the externalities that come into play. Otherwise, the message is the same, the needs are the same, the requirements. We want to develop, we want prosperity, we want the incomes of our people, the living standards, and so on and so forth to improve and reach a certain level in a certain time. And then when we reach that time, we should even be aspiring for more going forward. That's really what happens.
Yeah, looking at doing better and accountability, as you have said, across the African continent, great strides have been achieved in the operationalizing of the African Continental Free Trade Area, but the momentum seems to be declining, especially looking around the pending negotiations on critical rules of origin and tariff schedules to facilitate commercially meaningful trade. Do we need a political intervention to overcome these hurdles?
We need political will almost in everything that we have to do. The fact that we put a CFTA in place, for example, required political will, and political will not of just one country or two, but all of us on our continent. And the numbers so far are good in terms of those who came forward and said this is the right thing we should do. And when you look at those who signed, those who ratified, the countries, almost all of them, were in some cases were at 47 or 44, 47, those who ratified. Then we have others who signed, about 50 of the countries on the continent. So that's a good step. Of course, it gets harder going to the final steps of realization of really having the CFTA that works for everybody. There's the legacy problems, people get lost in some things they think are important for them, even with some misinterpretation of what all that means. Sometimes people say, no, don't touch this, it has to do with the sovereignty, but in the end, if you don't do it, your sovereignty is just a name. Sovereignty should entail freedoms for people to work within and across countries, and that's what delivers actually sovereignty better to anyone, to any country. So sometimes they just have mixed approaches and the definitions of what they should be doing, and they miss the point of doing what needs to be done. So political will is absolutely going to be important always, because that's what will allow, for example, freedom of movement of people, of goods, because you always find people can't easily cross borders either to neighboring countries or countries beyond, because there are all kinds of restrictions, whether there are visas or different questions being raised or distorted sort of competition. It's like, things should not cross our border from country X and country Y, because when they come here, our people, they think they're businesses will be either interfered with, or the business people will lose. Or people fail to grasp the big picture that is entailed here, that after all, if I can cross, if we can have people cross borders with what they produce, the others do the same, and they benefit more. Having such a big market as there is in CFTA is an asset. It's not a liability at all. It's a huge, huge asset that Africa has. If Africans can trade with each other, can invest in and with each other. But for that to happen, and happen fast and move fast, it requires our leaders on our continent to have that political will, to see the point and see the urgency of it, and allow certain things to happen through the systems of any country, instead of putting brakes on what we are trying to achieve. So we are seeing good developments. One can say slow in some sense. You feel we could move faster, and faster could move, the better for countries to develop, even for that unity itself. You know, seeing my country relate with another country as something healthy rather than being problematic. It's good for the continent. I mean, you can look back and ask yourself questions. Why Africa, endowed with so much in terms of resources of every kind, human and others, why is Africa where we are today? It has no proper explanation. Why are countries that were at the same level as Africa maybe 30, 40 years ago have moved ahead 10 times ahead of us compared to where we were together last time? What is the explanation? There's something wrong, or maybe structural, so that we need to address. And if we could have this political will and driven by the sense of urgency, maybe we could see these developments for real.
Yeah, Your Excellency, staying within the region, what are your comments on the findings in the recent United Nations group of experts' final report on the Democratic Republic of Congo?
These reports have been there for now, maybe we are coming to close to 30 years. They're just reports coming up, and when you look at it and you've lived in this region and you know what has happened and is happening, and sometimes you wonder what the exercise is all about. Is it really aimed at resolving problems? Do they present facts of the situation to help people do the right thing, to resolve the problems obtaining and move on to other things? Or are they just aimed at sanitizing, you know, the involvement, the names of many perpetrators, and really keeping the status quo, so that in the end, I think, there is just money flowing into the situation and out, and people living off of it, and countries and using it to manage other countries, and then bringing in the NGOs that play into that and enable the powers that be keep the region and Africa where it should stay, and keep, pacifying and managing us even without peace. Because, for example, if you have read it, I haven't seen, if I may pick a few examples, we have refugees here from Congo who have been living here for a couple of decades now. And there have been more coming across the border into Rwanda because they are running away from persecution. Some have been killed, women raped, others cross with scars, and so on and so forth. There has been hate speech, there has been all kinds of things relating to the turbulent history of Rwanda or the region. But you find these reports always fall short of addressing even the understanding of this problem, let alone providing possible solutions for those problems. Now, that's one. The other is actually complete distortion sometimes they create. Because if you look at, again, the report, there is highlighting some aspects of problems here. They always say M23, M23. M23 is everybody's problem. It has become an international problem. I think M23 affects Europe, affects America, affects Africa, and they are quiet. They speak in whispers when it talks about FDLR, when they're talking about over 120 armed groups in Eastern Congo. They only highlight M23 and ADF, yes, ADF, they talk about ADF. Sometimes even trying to create an equivalence so that M23 and ADF are equivalent. But FDLR, these genociders, who have now become part of really the National Army of DRC, have been armed, they are known, we have names, ranks, we know, but they assume these people don't even exist, that it is not even a problem that we should be talking about. And when you ask, you say, okay, but are you saying these people have never existed? They say, yeah, yes, they have, but so where are they? Where did they go to? Just disappeared? They say, most of them, these people went back home, they are no longer there. But on one hand, they say they went back home. On the other hand, they are not talking about those who have stayed and are actually causing problems. They've been causing problems to Rwanda. Like, the case from 2019, and other cases that followed later on. And then these names we talk about that we know exist in that part. Then you have other cases in, that is North Kivu, then you have other cases in South Kivu involving, again, not only people from Rwanda, the cases where Burundi is affected in the same way. They have people they have to confront that live in that part, and then there is a mix of the Congolese groups and national forces. Then you have the UN that is always crisscrossing from North Kivu to South Kivu, and sometimes you cannot even understand what is going on. So I would have expected that a report like that really clarifies who is who and what they are doing and where they came from or what their intentions are, without exception, and then guide us to the possible actions that should be taken in order to pacify, because pacifying Eastern Congo is not just pacifying Congo, it's also pacifying the neighboring countries, whether it is Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi, and maybe others beyond in other geographical parts. So what can I say about, well, and they are called a group of experts. But experts in, do you know they have not been here to, for example, talk to people who have actually been fleeing from Congo to Rwanda and maybe to Uganda or some other places, but mainly here is what I'm more conversant about. They've never done that. Why? Why do you think an expert is supposed to be taken seriously, and therefore the report they write would not have done that? It shows something, maybe akin to bias of some sort. And how do you address a problem like this? When so that's people are trying to write their own narratives. The group of experts maintains the narrative that was set long ago, close to 30 years ago, around the story of genocide. But they want genocide to be seen more in their own view than in the reality of what happened here. That's what I was referring to when I was talking of sanitization of certain parties and their involvement. It's a narrative that goes on for a long time. It's the victim in the end turns into a perpetrator. So Rwanda, which if you look at our history, which you talked about earlier, where we have come from, we must be made to carry the name of being some kind of perpetrator or responsible for the chaos in the region, and even in Eastern Congo or in Congo. Then they bring up issues about, mineral exploitation, that we are there for minerals. It's no longer an issue of FDLR, it's M23, it's no longer for their national rights in Congo. It's about being proxies for Rwanda to achieve exploitation of minerals or achieve some even go to the extent of saying we want to cut a part of Congo and annex it and make it ours. They create all sorts of theories and stories. So even if the report, the group of experts does not say that, but it provides the ground on which people can grow these seeds of confusion and division, and so we in our case we really have to always be careful, as we have been and continue to be, so that we don't get lost into this mess and forget our priorities, which is to keep Rwanda and Rwandans and those who live here, wherever they come from, secure, irrespective of the rumblings that go on around us.
I don't think